This fern is very strange because we see that the last part of the front is flat, is two-dimensional, but we see that all the smaller elements, smaller segments are rising up in the middle along the rashes. So we have two kinds of distribution, the horizontal distribution of the big leaflets or pinnules, and here the pinnules are totally erect, almost perpendicular. It's the same one which has three parts, one big part which is mostly horizontal, one small just under the surface, and the other one just here, almost perpendicular to the rashes. So you have leaflets in all the directions behind the main distribution of the horizontal leaflets and in the front. So it's very, very strange fur. The Tournefortia, one of the two endemic species of Tournefortia. This endemic peperomia, this passiflora also is endemic not simply to Galapagos, but the passiflora is endemic to Santa Cruz Island. The peperomia, as soon as there is high humidity level, we can see it on most of the islands. So here we see a population of Scalesia pedunculata. So we see quite big trees, quite old trees, and we see what's interesting, some trunks, which are the signal of dead trees, because very often they are flowering at the same time, and after, when they die, all the young ones are appearing. These two ones are very young, probably around 1 year old. The ramification, of course, is totally different from the old trees covered by the lichens, and we see that the ramification is continuous, and of course all these small branches will die, and after only few important branches will grow again.
T'as eu au doigt, hein?
Oula!
Oh là là, t'as vu, il reste que des toutes petites touffes en haut.
Ah, bah oui, c'est ça que oui. Here we understand that this Scalesia covered by epiphytes, it's at the end of its life, because we see clearly that there are only very few bunches of leaves at the top of the branches. In this population of the old Scalesia, we clearly see the crown shyness. So we see the separation between the crowns of different trees, but also inside a single tree, we see clearly that the leaves of one branch are totally separated from the nearest crownlet. So it's a shyness between crowns of different trees and crownlets of the same tree.
You're intrigued.
I'm intrigued by the spadix, erect small spadix of the peperomia. Here we see the green form of the peperomia, because all the individuals on this branch close to the giant turtles are not edged by red, they are totally green, and it's true for all the plants on this branch. It's very strange here because it's so humid with the garua, and so it's strange to see so few bromeliads except this endemic Tillandsia. It's very strange not to see all the trees covered by this. We see many ferns, many peperomia individuals, but so few bromeliads, whereas in the Andes there are so many, and also in Amazonia, so it's a little bit strange. One of the two species of Alternanthera, but here we see the fruits. So this one has very separated fruits. So this Scouleri affinis is quite particular due to the purple margin. It's like dots, but actually it's not really dots. It's the teeth of the margin of the leaf which end with a purple point. So I don't know if it's a hydatod on the edge of the leaves, especially visible in the young leaves, but also we can see on older leaves these purple dots. It's very elegant. And another thing which is quite particular is that there are ligulate flowers around the central fertile flowers. Actually, this Scouleri affinis, which is a quite big shrub, is very particular for the purple spots, for the inflorescence with ligulate flowers. It's one thing, and also because it retains all the dead leaves along the branches, so it gives a very strange looking. And we see that these specimens are already quite old, because we see that this one has less and less leaves, so probably it will die quite soon, because all the species of Scouleri have a very short span of life. This is a plumbago, but it's a quite carpeting plumbago, not climbing and not shrubby. Opuntia echios, subspecies gigantea, which is characteristic of this part of the Santa Cruz Island. So it's the tallest species of this cactus. It seems it can reach about 150 years when they are very tall. And most of these ones maybe are maybe 100 according to the difference of size we can see according to the different specimens. And it's very interesting to see that the spines are finally disappearing when the stem becomes older, and the very beautiful retidum, the bark, the red retidum appears, and we can see after the transition with the spiny rackets, the pads. We clearly see the areoles with so many erect spines, but they seem to be not oh yeah, yes, I'm full. Oui, I'm full. Yes, of course, I'm full. It's a cactus, no doubt. For example, like the scorpion, typical of the Mur Végétal of the Galapagos Croton. All along this Tortuga beach, we see Semola, but it's a very strange Semola, the Semola plumieri, but I'm very surprised because it is totally prostrate on the sandy soil. It has very thick round leaves, so it's very different from the very common Semola tacada that we can see on most of the beaches of the tropical world. This one is totally different. It's interesting. It has two kinds of life. It has its own way of life when it has the leaves and flowers and fruits, and we see that when it dies, the stems are totally covered by orange lichens. So when they die, they are the support for another type of life, which is a lichen life. So it's interesting to see the two succession of life due to the organization of one plant. Here we see clearly how is the structure of the trunks of these opuntia. It's this kind of a network, spongy network, but actually very well maintaining the trunk with these crossed fibers. Now at night we see the Parkinsonia aculeata. Aculeata, the name is perfect when we see the size of the spines. But what's interesting is that at night all the leaflets are closed and it looks like a fillet of many acacia. We don't see the leaflets, while during the day we see the leaflets. But here the form of this Parkinsonia aculeata is very particular because actually the leaflets are very soft, very long compared to the ones I see on this species in other places in South America or even in the Caribbean islands. But the flowers are quite similar. We see the typical caesalpinoid flowers, bright yellow. Il est très différent ce Parkinsonia de ce qu'on connaît d'habitude. Vous avez vu, les feuilles sont entièrement fermées. On dirait que ce sont des phyllodes. This is a Lycium minimum. It's a Solanaceae with just very, very narrow leaves and a totally plagiotropic growth habit. The architecture is totally curved, so probably it's a good place for animals to hide under this horizontal branch. And the flowers are probably very small, but should be like a solanum. It's crazy, this for this variety. That's Opuntia echios, so it's the nominal variety. We can understand why it was not named echios, because when we see the length of the spines, it's very surprising. And what's interesting, according to different individuals, this one has very long spine, but some other have smaller ones. So the protection obviously very efficient. Like a sea urchins of the earth. So here we see the third subspecies, and so it's different. It has a very short stem, and iguanas love it, of course. Usually when the islands have iguanas, the cactus have much higher trunks. But here on this island, the iguanas were introduced because on the other islands they were disappearing due to the explosion of the dogs eating, of course, iguanas and the babies, same as for the rats. So this island is protected from dogs. There are iguanas, but it's a problem for the cactus because it is eaten a lot by the iguanas. So now they are trying to reduce a little bit the population of iguanas to introduce them on other islands. the iguana is probably waiting to eat something, and we see many parts, and so they can climb because we see many parts of the path which are eaten by the iguanas, so they can climb quite high. See actually that the rashes is very thick and the leaflets are very small in this very dry climate. So it's a little bit different from the Parkinsonia we can see on the bigger islands like Santa Cruz, where the leaflets are much bigger and the rashes is much smaller. So here we see the endemic Myconia species, and it's interesting to see that actually they are same as for many Myconia species. We can see the two different forms, the one which is totally green and the other one just behind, which has a little bit more anthocyanins in the vacuoles of the cells and which is more red. So this is very usual in many Melastomataceae and other understory plants, and these are very healthy, both are flowering. The two forms of this endemic Myconia fernandesiana. Here is the anthocyanic form with the red leaves, which are a little bit smaller. And here the totally green form with totally green leaves, only the vines are red. Whereas in this one, the vines are not red, but all the leaf surface. And it's quite interesting because in this case, it's mostly the leaf surface which is anthocyanic. So maybe a protection in this case against UV light. We see that both are flowering. This one has many terminal inflorescences. This one has fewer but usually bigger inflorescences. But anyway, all of them are producing both flowers and fruit, and the fruit is quite nice. It's a bright iridescent metallic blue. So this Myconia is at home, not the same as the species invading many islands like Hawaii and French Polynesia, Tahiti for instance. This one is at home here, and it creates forest but not invasive. It invades this area, but it's a local species. In Galapagos, it's very strange to listen this sound of water because many parts are dry, and most important, everybody thinks that Galapagos are only arid volcanic islands with no plants, and but we see with the garua these small drops of water in the higher part, but everywhere due to Humboldt current we have garua, same as along the coast of Peru for instance, and this is very important for the plants of course because they can catch the water. The lichens, we see that lichens are absolutely everywhere, very thick mats of lichens. So it's a very special site. Yes, it's a small echinocephala, probably the genus Ludwigia. Usually it's growing in water, but we see that here it's so humid. So now I don't know if it's native or introduced, but it can be native. And we see actually, same as with the orchid, the peduncle of the flower actually is the ovary. And we can see this clearly on this other stem, for instance, where we see the calyx, the four-lobed calyx is remaining, and we see that the peduncle becomes the fruit. So the ovary, same as orchids, acts like peduncle of the flower. A tree fern. There's not a high trunk, but we clearly see a tree fern. So this is an endemic Cyathea species, because here in Galapagos, it's so humid in the mountains. We are not high, here we are about 600 meters above sea level, but with the garua, it's always humid and the tree ferns are perfectly happy. There are some endemic species of Cyperus here in the Galapagos Islands, so maybe this is one of the 3 or 4 endemic species. It's a very characteristic lower side of the frond with a grey color, which means that these are oppressed scales under the frond. Some of the species in this genus are growing in very lighted areas, even in subdesertic areas, but some others are more from forest habitat. And when we touch, we see the sorry on the lower surface, the brown sorry. Yeah, here I see that the sphagnum are even growing submerged inside the water, and it's not so common because usually sphagnum only the tips are growing above the water and they are never going inside the water. But here we see they are doing this, and I'm surprised. Here at the Puntudo, it is the highest summit of Santa Cruz Island, reaching about 750 meters above sea level. Here we are a little bit lower, maybe at 550, something like that. And we see 2 individuals of the endemic tree fern, the endemic Cyathea, which has very thick leaves, very bright green and black rachis. This is quite usual. It's not a huge tree fern. The trunk, all the specimens we can see have quite short trunk like this, but maybe that in more protected areas they can be a little bit higher. And we see, of course, the young fronds in the middle here and protected by all the hairs. And the sorry, we see clearly the sorry on the under surface of the pinnus. This bluish fern is probably Polypodium aureum, and it is very glaucous. We see this fern, for instance, is perfectly glaucous. We can see probably the sorry not yet developed. We see the young sorry on the very blue color of the lower side of the pinnule, and maybe sorry, yes, sorry much more visible on this older frond. Here we are in this pure Miconia forest, and it's very strange because here in the Galapagos Island it seems it's quite climatic. I mean totally the achievement to have this forest with only one species. For instance, here is a Miconia forest. In other parts, like the Los Gemelos, it's a Scalesia pedunculata forest, and regeneration occurs within only one species, and this is not at all usual to see a perfect equilibrium with only one species. Of course, it's a volcanic island, so the rhythm of regeneration and the succession is different, but it's because these Miconia reach about 5-7 meters, and we see all the different sizes, so it means that the regeneration occurs in the right way because there are all the stages of regeneration. So it's quite strange, but it's pleasant because this Miconia is very beautiful, and we see among them the tree ferns and the Cyathea, some Cyathea between these Miconias, and of course some other species, but few species, the other blue fern, but very, very few species in this forest. It seems that the flowers of the Miconia open around 12 in the midday. Of course, the seeds inside the fruits, inside the berry fruits, are dispersed by many birds, some Darwin finches, of course, but also other birds are fond of the fruits because all Melastomataceae species have edible sweet fruits.
Por la selva va este corazón transido con tristeza de tapera, sintiendo tu hielo, porque queda con su olvido hoy le ha abierto una gotera, perdido como un duende que en la sombra mala busca y mala nombra, garúa, tristeza, hasta el cielo se ha puesto a llorar. Garúa, tristeza, hasta el cielo se ha puesto a llorar.